Hello, today we are going to be looking at a poem to a daughter leaving home. So, a first look at the title and first impressions before we dive into the poem is pretty self-explanatory. I think it's about a daughter who is leaving home. And this is probably from a parent who is happy that the daughter is successful and getting out of the house, whether that's because of college or a job opportunity. But I think the parent is also going to be somewhat sad because the daughter is growing up and being more independent, and that's tough to deal with when a parent has worked so hard on protecting that little girl. But let's find out. Let's just dive into the poem, shall we? So, here's the poem. I'll read to you. Enjoy. When I taught you at 8 to ride a bicycle, loping along beside you as you wobbled away on 2 round wheels, my own mouth rounding in surprise when you pulled ahead down the curved path of the park. I kept waiting for the thud of your crash as I sprinted to catch up, while you grew smaller, more breakable with distance. Pumping for your life, screaming with laughter, the hair flapping behind you, like a handkerchief waving goodbye. So, a paraphrase of this with my, very much less talented reading skills of putting the poem in my word, this is what I came up with. When you were 8, I taught you how to ride a bike. I was there by your side to help you as you wobbled and tried to balance on 2 wheels. To my surprise, you took off while I was scared you would fall. I ran for you just in case you rode away. You rode so far that you became smaller in my field of vision, and that made you seem more vulnerable. But you were working for yourself and with your handkerchief flapping in my direction, even though you weren't saying goodbye. So, looking at the literary devices in this poem overall, I think the biggest thing is the metaphor for the poem is growing up. It's looking at the nostalgic idea of teaching a daughter how to ride a bike, the first big milestone of growing up, and comparing that to the full growing up process of scared that they're going to fall, but then they do it on their own and you're so happy, but then suddenly that means they're riding away from you. Another metaphor later on is shown, they say that she is riding on a curved path. A curved path meaning that it is harder to drive on than like a straight path. Curved could also mean unknown, and you're not sure what kind of twists and turns and bumps you may come across, but she's riding on them. Another thing to notice is the symbol would be for the bike representing her freedom and how she is on her way, riding away with it. The simile in this is hair flopping behind you like a handkerchief waving goodbye. And also in that simile, you see the personification of handkerchief, as the handkerchief can literally wave goodbye. But she's just driving so fast that it makes it seem like the handkerchief is waving goodbye, clearly because she's so overcome with laughter that she doesn't say it herself.
It is also important to notice that out of all the words that the author could have used to describe Doesn't Waving Goodbye, she chose a handkerchief, which is generally used in sad occasions or like to wipe away tears and stuff, as it is a bittersweet moment watching the girl ride away on her own.
And then the point of view is just as I suspected, a parental figure, and being more exact, a mother. The attitude with this poem is very complex. It changes with many different shifts, but we'll talk more about that later. But if you were having to sum it up in one word, it would be bittersweet. And you see some interesting word choice by the author. Some of this being like wobbled and expecting a thud. This meaning that the parents are anticipate something bad is going to happen, and not exactly have doubts in with her, but worried that she is going to fall. Knowing in the back of their mind that that could happen, and they automatically want to catch her when it does. And then you see words the word breakable come up at the end, which is a very strong choice to describe as she is growing smaller. They still, having it be breakable is showing that they see the daughter still as fragile and could still fall and break any minute. But with her growing smaller and smaller, they know that she has to deal with that on her own.
Yeah, even when looking at the shifts in the next slide, you can notice how careful the parents are being by describing their daughter as the mother is describing her daughter as a fragile thing versus a strong woman, because there's still doubt and concern in her mind, as when you're little, you are more prone to accidents and stuff, and she's just afraid that her daughter will fall.
So, some very important shifts in this poem, as small of a poem as it may seem here, we see 3 important shifts. The main one in the black being fear and anticipation of it. So kind of like how we talked about before with attitude, loping along beside you as you wobbled away on 2 round wheels. And then it comes back again with, I kept waiting for the thud of your crash as I sprinted to catch up. Catching up to try to catch her before she falls, as that's a parent's job. But then we also see in the orange that it changes from fear to astonished and elated because the mother sees that the daughter is able to ride her bike. My own mouth rounding. I'm in surprise when you pulled ahead down the curved path of the park. So, once again, like I said, very surprised that she is able to ride on her own and down the curved path like we talked about before. And then very subtly, we see the shift change from anticipation of fear, surprise, anticipation of fear again, to while you grew smaller, more breakable with distance. In the blue shows a concerned type of emotion, still a little bit scared that she could fall, but in the end also kind of dismal. The key word once again being breakable. And she's growing smaller, so she won't be in the mom's life too much longer. She's riding off into her own new path. So even though the words aren't there that she is sad because the daughter is leaving, you could tell that through the words breakable and growing smaller, that the mom is feeling quite some emotions about the daughter leaving after all. That brings us to the title Revisited. It is important to talk about the meaning of to. So kind of just like I predicted, to a daughter leaving home is almost like a letter to her daughter leaving home. But meaning of to is important because you would think that because it's for her daughter, it's going to be honest with emotion and talking about how she feels with her daughter leaving. But instead, she keeps her feelings very hidden and only stating a memory. Looking back at the shifts almost, you could see that there's nothing saying, I feel like this, I feel like that. We can only get that from the shifts and the attitude of, she's not exactly happy. Like, sure, that orange part is more surprised and excited that she's able to do this on her own. But overall, you still see it more covered up with fear and kind of sadness that she's growing up. But the mother is concealing that from her daughter because a parental's job overall is to keep the daughter safe, and she doesn't want the daughter to know how worried she really is. And then that brings us to the overall theme of this. I'm going to do my best with the theme. I think overall it is being the fact of being a parent is a tough job, as the goal is for the child to grow up and be independent. But it is also going to be painful seeing them go off on their own. It is a challenge, especially as the world can be tough and you're not really sure what could happen and what to expect. But the instinct of a parent is to save the child from falling off that bike of theirs, but also hoping that they can get by on their own with the skills that they've learned from their parents. So, yeah, that is overall the poem of To a Daughter Leaving Home. I hope you learned something from this video, and yeah, thanks so much for watching.